Okay, so once again, good afternoon and welcome to the Office of National Scholarship Advisement's information session on critical foreign language scholarships. My name is Dr. Laurie Stoff. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of National Scholarship Advisement, and I am joined here today by my colleague, Dr. Irina Levin, who is another of the faculty mentors who will also be advising on a number of these awards, including Boren and critical language scholarships. So without further ado, we will start. So you might not be familiar with our office. And so just in case you're not, I'm going to do a brief introduction. We go by the acronym ONSA because, you know, at ASU, everything is an acronym. So we don't use full words anymore. So we are known as ONSA. And we do all kinds of things for students all over ASU at all of the campuses and online students as well. We provide webinars and info sessions like the one that you're attending right now. We do individual and group advising on particular opportunities, as well as helping to advise you to find opportunities. We do writing instruction and workshops to help you with essays and other written materials that you need to prepare for applications. We will help you prep for interviews should that particular opportunity that you're applying for require you to have an interview. We also do the whole process of campus endorsement. So there are some awards, as we'll be talking about today, that do require endorsements from your university. In other words, you cannot just apply on your own. So we take care of that whole process. We set up the campus committees that will interview you, and we ensure that you get the endorsement from us, from your university, in order to apply for that award. And we provide all kinds of guidance, not just to students, but also to the faculty who mentor you, who write letters of recommendation for you, and help you with the process of applying for these awards. So basically, the long and the short of that is that we are here to help you. So you might be wondering what national scholarships means and how this is different from, for example, your financial aid office. We do things that are external to ASU, so national and international competitions, funding sources, not that you can use to apply for ASU, or there are some exceptions that I'll talk about in a moment, but generally these are external awards that allow you to go to other places, in particular other countries, as we're going to speak about today. And we help you acquire these. And what we really like you to know is that, yes, it's great to get money to do all these wonderful things. But the money is actually not the only benefit, and maybe not even the major benefit, because these opportunities allow you to have experiences that you would never otherwise have, travel to places you probably wouldn't have the opportunity to do, meet people that you wouldn't be able to meet, find out things about yourself that you probably never knew, make connections, get prestige, recognition, get plugged into networks that are going to be really important for your future. And so all of these things are benefits aside from just the financial gain. So then you might also be wondering what critical languages are. So critical languages are those that are less commonly taught. So not usually Spanish or German or French, basically not really Western European languages, with a few exceptions. Portuguese is one that is considered a critical language because it is spoken in large portions of the world that are important to our national security, like Brazil. French also is sometimes an exception because it's spoken in African nations. And so there is some opportunity to study those, but generally we're talking about things that are not non-Western European languages. And again, they are things defined by our government as being important to our foreign interests, our ability to engage with the world, our national security. So the first award that I would like to tell you a little bit about is the Boren Awards, which is an initiative of the Department of Defense. They have a specific program, the Defense Language and National Security Education Office, which administers this program. It provides funding for U.S. undergraduates in the form of Boren Scholars, and graduate students in the form of Boren Fellows. The emphasis of Boren Awards is on languages in rural regions that are considered to be critical to U.S. interests and underrepresented generally in study abroad. So in other words, they're places that students don't usually travel to, like the UK or Italy or France. They're in other places in the world, again, that we consider to be important for our national security, very broadly defined. And importantly, the Boren Award is a really great pathway into federal employment. And I'm going to tell you why that is in a moment, which might be of interest to you because as I've come to discover, many students, perhaps most students, are enrolling in college not necessarily for intellectual edification, but for the opportunity to get well-paid jobs. And the jobs with the federal government are definitely those that fit in that category. So as I mentioned, there are two forms of Boren Awards. There's scholarships for undergraduates and fellowships for graduate students. For U.S. undergraduates, the scholarships provide up to $25,000 for a program of your choosing that is either semester length or a year long, so between 25 and 52 weeks. Those are the preferred programs that Boren funds. They really want you to spend extended time in the countries. However, they will accept proposals for shorter term study, 12 to 24 weeks, for which they will give you up to $12.5 thousand. So that's not a bad deal. And these are open to students in all disciplines, although they do have some of the disciplines that they prefer, but really, if you make a strong enough argument, they don't really care that much what discipline you're coming from. If you are a STEM major, however, Boren does make an exception and it allows you to be in a program that's of much shorter length, so 8 to 11 weeks, perhaps a summer program, and they will give you $8,000 for that. And the reason for this is because STEM students often find it very difficult to fit language study into their regular course of study because they're kind of overloaded with courses for their major. And unfortunately, STEM programs don't prioritize language learning as part of the curriculum. And so therefore, Boren understands that perhaps a summer program, an intensive immersion program, is more suitable for STEM students. For the fellowships for graduate students, they will provide up to $30,000, so $25,000 for a program of 25 to 52 weeks, or 12.5 thousand for 12 to 24 weeks. But then you can also add on an additional summer program, and that could even be a domestic program. So here in the U.S., and I'm going to talk about some of those in a moment, which they will give you an additional $5,000 for. And if you are a graduate student and you travel, you can also do research while you're undertaking study of the critical language. In order to be eligible for the Boren Awards, you do need to be a U.S. citizen by the time of the application due date. That's January of 2025. You also have to not be a citizen of the country to which you are applying. That is a stipulation of Boren. You do have to be planning on studying a critical foreign language in a region that is eligible, and we're going to talk about what those are in a moment. You do need to be currently enrolled in a degree-granting undergraduate or graduate program, or applying to attend a graduate program. And you have to be continuously enrolled during the grant period. Now, for those of you who are seniors and will be graduating or perhaps finishing your master's degree and will be finished by the time the program starts, which would be next fall, we can adjust your transcript to make it look like you're still enrolled so that you will be eligible to participate in the Boren program. So as you can see, there are a lot of different languages that Boren prefers. In particular, again, these are languages that are not commonly taught, not commonly spoken, not really part of general sort of language education that you find at US universities, with the exception, again, of languages like Portuguese and French. So that the different languages that you see listed here gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility and variety in terms of pursuing different languages. They also will accept proposals for indigenous languages that are not listed here. So African indigenous languages, Latin American indigenous languages also are things, as long as you can make a strong argument that this language is necessary to enhance US interests in the world. And as you can see, there's a lot of different places that you can travel to. There's a huge list of countries. You will notice, however, that the ones that are marked with asterisks are places where either you're probably not going to be able to be approved to go to. Either the US Department of State has issued travel advisories and warnings against Americans traveling there, or there's some political or other dangerous situations, so you're not going to be able to go there. In that case, if you're trying to study a language that is spoken in one of those places, you're better off trying to propose going to another country where perhaps that language might be spoken as well as a minority language, rather than proposing a country that is likely not to be approved. This map kind of gives you a better idea, sort of geographically, of what those countries are. So as you can see, the ones that are in green are the ones that are preferred, meaning there's no restrictions at all. You can travel to those countries, with the exception of languages like Arabic, Mandarin, or Russian. In that case, you do need a backup country. I will say right now that no one is going to Russia. No one is going to Ukraine either. There's a war going on, so the US government is not going to feel safe sending you there. So you would want to propose an alternate program in another country. There are lots of other countries where those languages are spoken, and so you would just propose a different place. Again, Chinese is a good, Mandarin is another good example. You're not going to go to the People's Republic of China, but you can easily propose a program in Taiwan, and many students do and are successful in their applications. The countries that are marked in yellow, on this map, it kind of looks more like beige. Those countries are non-preferred, which means that if you propose a program in one of those countries, you have to make a really, really strong argument that it's necessary for national security, especially, for example, if you wanted to do something like Spanish, which is generally not considered a critical language. So you would really have to work very hard to do it. It might make your application less competitive if that's what you're proposing. So I want to take a moment just to talk about what Boren means by national security, because oftentimes we think of that term as very narrowly defined, being related to intelligence or defense. And that's not really what Boren is going for. It's really looking for a much broader definition of national security. Really think about it more in terms of stability rather than security. What kinds of things could you propose about a particular language in a particular place where you would study that language that would make a good argument about how US interests would be will be benefited by, for example, sustainable development, environmental studies, global health, population growth, migration issues, or economic competitiveness, right? So you don't have to think of it so narrowly like defense or intelligence. So now we come to the string that is attached to the Boren Award, because in return for that very generous grant that they're going to give you to go abroad and study the language of your choice in the program of your choice, they do have a service requirement. So you must commit to at least 1 year in the US federal government, but you may choose any of the agencies of the US federal government that you would like to work in. So here's an example of some of the ones especially ones that they prefer. They really like Department of State and Homeland Security and Department of Defense and any intelligence agencies. But if you're not interested in working in those particular areas, let's say you would like to go work for the Department of Agriculture, that's totally fine as long as you can make a very strong argument that this is something that is necessary for, again, the U.S. interests in the world, for our stability, for economic enhancement, whatever it is that you may think. So, as I said, really there's a lot of flexibility. But what this really means is that, so for those of you who are in college right now, in order to get a good paying job, is that basically you are guaranteed a good paying job for at least 1 year after you do the boron. There is the stipulation that you must do that federal service within 3 years of you finishing your degree program. But they will help you get the job. They basically enroll you in what's called the National Security Education Program, which assists you with preparation, with the search and placement in a federal agency that will be suitable, again, based on the arguments that you're making about your interests, about national security, again, broadly conceived. So it's really not a bad deal, especially if you are interested in a career in public service. This is a great way to sort of be fast-tracked in there. Okay, so there's also something that you should consider with regard to foreign as they look at certain populations and certain majors. I already mentioned that they will allow STEM majors to propose a summer-only program. So again, if you don't want to go for an entire year and you are a STEM major, you can do a summer-only program. If you are ROTC, as a matter of fact, if you are either a current or past member of the U.S. military, you will be given preference. They really, really like folks who are attached to the military. And they give preference to students who are enrolled in language flagship programs. We here at ASU have the Chinese flagship program, and I'm going to talk more about that. So you all will get special consideration if you apply for boron. And graduate students can also apply for that extra domestic language study. And I'm going to talk more about the programs where you can do that in a moment. There's also a few boron special initiatives that I wanted to mention. These are carefully selected credit-bearing language courses during the summer. So you do part of it over the summer here in the US, and then in the fall you go overseas with the option to continue into a longer term, so you can go for an entire year. So if you are interested in any of these African languages, including French, because French, obviously because of French colonization of Africa, is widely spoken there, you won't apply to a program of your choosing. Instead, you will apply to what is called the African Flagship Language Initiative, AFLI, which is a preset program. They already have all the courses set up. They have all of the program components already set up. And so you apply to that, and that's how you will study the languages. Similarly, with Indonesian, Thai, and Vietnamese, they have a program called SIFLI, right? So you will apply to that program. It's a preset language program that's already established in these countries. And so you don't have to go and find your own program, which is the case with all of the other of the other languages that boron will fund. Okay, so the boron application is a little bit of a project. In other words, you really need to devote some time to it. And you do need to go through our office in order to apply, because boron requires a nomination from your university. In other words, you can't just open an application and apply on your own. You have to get us to endorse you. Everything that you will do with this application is online. And the components include a language assessment, in other words, a self-assessment of where you are in terms of language learning. you have to choose the program that you want to go to. And if you go on the Bourne website, you'll see a tremendous number of pre-existing programs that other Bourne fellows and scholars have done. So you can use one of those, or you can do your own research and find another program and basically just make the argument that this program is the one you need to do in order to accomplish the level of language proficiency that you're seeking, and how that is related to your course of study and, again, to national security. You also have to do a budget, right? You have to tell them how much things are cost. They're not just going to cut you a check for $25,000. You have to justify the money that you're asking for. It also includes 2 essays of about 1,000 words. And I'm going to talk about those in a little bit more detail in a second. You have to have official transcripts for scholars, undergrads. They require 2 letters of recommendation, but they require 3. I'm sorry, they recommend 3. We say if they're recommending anything, just go ahead and get the 3. For the fellows, for the graduate students, you are required to have 3 letters of reference. So that's something you should start thinking about, right? If you're going to approach faculty members, you want to give them enough lead time. You want to think carefully about who you want to write for you so that they can write the strongest letters for you. And so that's something you should probably start thinking about. And if you are proposing to study a language that you've already been studying and you're at a certain level, you are recommended to get a language instructor to also do an evaluation in addition to your self-evaluation. So as far as the essays are concerned, I mentioned there are 2. The first one is about national security, again, broadly conceived. The idea here is to explain the significance of your proposed country, region, and language to U.S. national security or stability interests, again, be they economic, environmental, whatever it is that you're proposing. Please do make sure that this is a central focus, though. You're not going to get a Bourne Award if you argue you need to study this language so that you can go and start a business and make a lot of money off of the people who speak the language. That's definitely not going to be something Bourne is interested in funding. So it really has to be focused on your academic interest and professional goals as they serve this larger purpose with regard to U.S. interests and the world's interests. So you kind of want to think about it this way. This Venn diagram, I think, does a good job of showing how these things intersect, right? So you're thinking very much about how the language, the country, the region is important to U.S. national security interests. You're thinking about how the language in particular is important for that and the country that you're applying for, and then how that intersects with your intellectual and professional interests. The second essay is about your motivation to study the language and to serve in a public service career. So this also has to be very clearly articulated. And this essay actually has 3 components. The first is where you will describe a previous experience that has led to growth or a personal quality. Describe how it will assist you in preparing to spend significant time overseas. So one of the things you really want to think about is demonstrating that you have the flexibility, the adaptability, the cultural sensitivity, the ability to step outside of your comfort zone, to be able to live in a very foreign context for an extended period of time, right? That essentially you're going to be okay if they plop you down in another country, which is going to be very foreign to you, regardless of how much time you may have been studying the language and the place. If you haven't spent extended periods of time, you will experience culture shock. It's impossible really not to. And so what kinds of tools do you have under your belt that's going to allow you to be able to successfully navigate that experience and to adjust to that new life? In other words, you're not going to crawl in a hole and say, where's McDonald's? I want to go home, right? You're going to be able to handle that experience abroad. You're also going to explain how the country and language that you've selected will help you achieve your career goals, including that very important component of serving in the federal government. And the Bourne website has an extensive page of guidance on how to choose your federal service, so you can peruse that at your convenience. It will help to guide you in terms of making that strong argument, which federal agency you want to work for. And you should be very specific about that, right? And you should name it. And even to some extent, what you want to do in that agency. For example, if you want to go work for the Department of State and you want to be a Foreign Service officer, you should absolutely say that. Do be aware, though, that if you argue that you want to study a certain language in a certain region in order to become a Foreign Service officer, to be assigned to that region, you do not have that choice. The U.S. Department of State does not send Foreign Service officers to the countries or regions of their choice. They send them to the places where they believe they have the greatest need. So you need to be mindful of that. And you should describe what makes you interested in federal service, why you want to dedicate your life to this rather than, again, do something that is purely for your own benefit, and what you will bring to the table as a leader in the federal workforce. Okay. Oh, sorry, the wrong way. So this is something you should be aware of, and that's why we're doing this information session right now. And that is the timeline for the Boren application. You do need to let us know that you are intending to apply by scheduling an intake meeting with one of the advisors in our office by December 8th. So essentially before you go off for winter break to do whatever wonderful thing you're going to do over winter break, make sure you make an appointment with one of the advisors, and I'm going to show you how to do that at the end of this meeting, to let us know you intend to apply, and then we can start talking about strategies to work on the application over winter break, because if you notice, the campus deadline for application submission is January 8th for the graduate fellows and January 10th for the undergraduate scholars. That means basically before we even come back from winter break, we need to have your application materials in so that we can see them. And then we're going to distribute them to a committee of regional experts who are going to interview you and give you the endorsement that you will need in order to apply by the Boren national deadline, which is for fellows January 22nd and for scholars January 29th. Okay, so that means really you should start working on it pretty soon. Obviously, you've got a lot of stuff probably going on as well, but if you're intending on applying to Boren, it is something you should start thinking about. Okay, I'm going to just stop for one moment, as I said, just to see if there are any questions that you have about Boren before I move on to start talking about our next opportunity. And I see that Dr. Levin has been very diligently answering questions in the chat. So I appreciate that, but if there are other questions that have not yet been answered, I'm happy to do that. Josh, yes.
Hi, Dr. Stoff. One question that hadn't been answered was, can you get a Boren scholarship more than once as, well, let's see, Dr. Levin mentioned that you could get one as an undergrad and one as a grad. Can you get multiple for, let's say, for different languages or whatever as an undergrad or even as a grad?
I don't believe that they have restrictions, but I think that they're probably unlikely to fund you twice for the same type of scholarship. So yes, I think it's probably going to be more likely that, you know, you can be a scholar as an undergrad and then a fellow as a graduate student. And yes, and Dr. Levin pointed out that these are pretty competitive. Although ASU has a fairly good success rate, we're running at about 50%, which is pretty good for these kinds of awards. So, which again, just attests to the fact that, you know, we're here to help you and to try to make sure that your application is as strong as possible. Okay, any other questions about boring?
There was one in the chat. So Ala says that she's starting her language courses in the spring. So they only have a fall application cycle, right, Dr.
That is
Saw?
correct.
Yeah,
That is
so you would
correct.
have to wait until the following fall to apply if you were still matriculated. If you're graduating in the spring, well, it depends on the language. For some of the languages, you're sort of more you're better off applying at the intermediate level. For others, there's plenty of opportunity to apply as a beginner. So it really depends, but the application cycle is once a year in the fall.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and a lot of the languages will allow you to come in at a totally beginner level. So it's just a good idea to really do a deep dive into the Boren website. They will give you some really good advice. It's a really extensive website. I will go ahead and put that in the chat so that you can all see the website, but and they break it down again by the awards for the undergraduates, the scholars, and the fellows. And they have a tremendous amount of guidance there in terms of how to choose your federal agency, and they have previously awarded scholars and fellows programs so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You can go in and you can see programs that other students have done in the past. Those are usually going to be a little bit easier to convince Boren to fund because they're sort of safe bets, right? Those are programs that they know that other students have done. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to do those programs. If you find another program that you think is better suited to what you're trying to accomplish, again, as long as you make a really strong argument for why that specific program is necessary for your language education, then you probably have a good chance of getting the grant. Okay, anything else on Boren? All right, great. We're going to move on now to another award called the Critical Languages Scholarship, or CLS. This is a program of the U.S. Department of State implemented by American Councils for International Education. It is intended to broaden the number of Americans studying critical foreign languages, again, open to students in any discipline, and they really are looking for a diversity of disciplines. They really encourage folks from disciplines that are not traditional disciplines where people study foreign languages, again, like STEM fields. But they are really looking for people who are committed to continue their language studies. So this is not like a one-off kind of thing. You really have to demonstrate to them that you're very much going to continue studying the language after you finish the CLS program. So the CLS program is a summer program. It's an intensive immersion program based in a foreign country. It usually runs about 8 to 10 weeks at a preset language training center. So unlike Boren, you don't have to go and find a program. The programs already exist. You just choose the language that you want to study and you apply. The great thing about these programs is that because they are these intensive immersion programs, they basically cram about a year's worth of language study into 8 to 10 weeks. They are really fabulous ways to learn language. I can attest to my own experience, sitting in a classroom, 4 or 5 days a week for an hour got me only so far in study. When I did the intensive immersion program, my language progressed leaps and bounds. I think Dr. Levin could also attest to the value of such programs. These are also really great because, again, if you cannot fit in an entire semester or an entire year-long language study program like Boren, you can just do it over the summer and you will advance an entire level of language. Now, the CLS program is more limited in terms of the choices of languages. As of right now, they are offering 12 different languages: Arabic, Chinese, Hindi, Indonesian, Japanese, Korean, Persian, Portuguese, Russian, Swahili, Turkish, and Urdu. There is no service requirement with CLS, no strings attached. They just fund you, send you abroad. and it's open to all levels of study. So undergraduate, graduate, all the way up until basically you have your PhD in hand, and you can participate in CLS multiple times with multiple languages. For eligibility, you do have to be a US citizen at the time of application, which is going to be November 19th. I'm going to get to that in a minute. You do need to be enrolled in an accredited degree granting program, either undergraduate or graduate, at the time of application. So that means in November, you still need to be enrolled. If you are intending on graduating or finishing your program in December or in May of 2025, that's totally fine, as long as you're still enrolled in November of this year when you apply. You do need to be 18 years old at the time of the start of the program for insurance reasons. And again, there's no limit to the numbers of times that you can participate in this program or the numbers of languages. You could do all 12 if you really wanted to, and if you made really strong arguments in your application. The CLS program benefits are domestic travel to and from DC for a pre-departure orientation, which is required. You need to go for about a week, and they will introduce you to the country, to the customs, and give you some insights into living there. They will pay for your international travel to and from the host country, all your visa fees, your housing, your meals, all of the program expenses, the classes, cultural excursions. You can get academic credit from CLS. They do it through Bryn Mawr University, and it's equivalent to 2 semesters of language study. So basically, if you're, let's say, at the 200 level of language study right now, and you do CLS at the 300 level, when you come back, you will won't have to take 300 here at ASU. You'll go right into 400. And what's really great about CLS is, like some of the other State Department programs, you will receive what is called, you have to apply for it, non-competitive eligibility for federal jobs, which basically means they fast track you into a federal job. So another really good resource, another really good pathway to a federal career. And I think I've already said now 3 times you can participate more than once. CLS does have some prerequisites though. So some of the languages you can do just from the very beginning, and others of them you have to have some study prior to starting their program. So no prior study required for Hindi, Indonesian, Persian, Portuguese, Swahili, Turkish, or Urdu. But for Arabic, Chinese, Korean, and Russian, you do have to have at least 1 year. For Japanese, you have to have at least 2 years. And when they mean 1 year or 2 years, they mean of university level language study or the equivalent, which means that you don't have to have been in a formal class, but you have to demonstrate to them that your level of learning is equivalent to what you would have acquired if you had been enrolled in a normal kind of university level language course. Notice the little asterisks here next to the languages that require prerequisites, because CLS now offers an online program called CLS Spark that will allow you to do the first year of these languages online, and then you can go on to do the in-country programs. I'm going to talk about CLS Spark in just a second. The application process is such that you do everything online, just like Boren. There's no nomination required, unlike Boren, so you don't have to go through our office, but I highly recommend that you do, because again, we will help you at every step of the application process. We will help you with your essays. We will help you with any questions that you may have, and obviously try to make your application as strong as possible. And I would highly encourage this, because CLS is much more competitive than Boren. So whereas Boren has about a 50% acceptance rate, CLS has a less than 10% acceptance rate. We at ASU tend to do a little bit better. The last several years, we've been creeping up towards about 14%. So we're doing fairly well with the students that we help, but do know that it is very competitive. You can only apply for 1 language at a time, right? So you choose the language that you want to apply for. Again, if you get accepted, you do that program, you can do another language at a later date. There are no letters of recommendation required, so that's an easier part of this application. And the essays are much shorter. So there's 3 short answers, basically 250 to 300 words, and then 1 statement of purpose, which is 500 words, where you will basically argue why, again, you need to have this language in order to accomplish your goals. And your goals, again, are things that are somehow going to benefit the wider world. So I mentioned the CLS Spark program. This is an entirely online program that offers virtual instruction for a beginning level study of Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and Russian. And they also have academic year-long online classes and activities that you can continue with. So they run it concurrently in the summer, but they have ways that you can continue keeping up your language. The key to this, to the Spark application, is that you have to demonstrate that you don't have the opportunity to study these languages at your home institution. That's a little tricky for ASU because we offer all of those languages. So what you would need to do is to demonstrate that because of your major, because of your course of study, because of other extenuating circumstances, it's not possible for you to enroll in our regularly offered classes in Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, or Russian. It is possible to do it. In fact, several years ago, our Rhodes Scholar, the student who won the Rhodes Scholarship, which is one of the most prestigious awards, also won a CLS Spark because he argued that as a quadruple major, an underachiever, he did not have room to fit the regular Russian language classes into his schedule. And so he was awarded a CLS Spark scholarship. He studied Russian with the Spark program. And then if you get the Spark program, you get automatic semifinalist status to go to the abroad program. So the next year, you're kind of fast-tracked into that program. And so then he went the year after that to study Russian abroad. Okay. So the timeline for this is very quick. Unfortunately, they do not open the application until October 2nd. But we can start working with you right away. So basically next week, right? The national deadline is November 19th. So that's a very quick turnaround. Again, as I mentioned, the essays are shorter, so they're a little bit easier, but we still want you to do multiple revisions of them to ensure that they are the strongest essays that they can possibly be. After you turn in your application, you'll be notified if you are a semifinalist in January or February of 2025. Final award notifications go out in March. And then alternates are promoted in March through May. And by the way, if you get alternate status, don't be discouraged. We always get at least a few alternates promoted to finalists. In fact, last year, all 3 of our alternates were promoted to finalist status. So we actually got those folks awards. And you do need to be available to attend the pre-departure orientation for overseas programs in June of 2025, and then the programs will begin later that month, and you'll travel to the country you'll be studying in. Okay, questions about CLS? Okay, I'm going
Very cool that they no longer require letters of recommendation, considering how short their application period is. So really no reason not to give it a try if you're interested in any of those languages.
Yes, and I should say the reason they did that is because they found it was a hindrance for getting as diverse of a pool as possible. There's some students who found it very difficult, especially first-year students, to get letters of recommendation because they didn't know their faculty members very well, and they're really striving to get a very diverse pool. The things that CLS is looking for is that you can handle a rigorous academic environment, because those intensive programs they're pretty rough, right? You'll learn so much, but you'll work very hard. You need to demonstrate your commitment to this language, right? Again, it's not just for fun. It's not just a one-off. You need to demonstrate your connection between the target language and your long-term goals. You need to show that you have the ability to adapt to an intensive program and a challenging cultural environment. So similar to Boren, show that you've got some ability to adjust to uncomfortable new situations, overcome culture shock, those kinds of things, and what you bring to the table in terms of the CLS program. Okay, So there are some other things that I want to tell you about with regard to opportunities to get money to study and to pursue opportunities to study critical languages. There is a scholarship called the Gilman Scholarship that will give you up to $5,000 for study abroad that you can apply to any ASU program or other programs at other universities. You can also use it for our own Critical Languages Institute, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. But you do need to be a current recipient of a Pell Grant or other Title IV federal funding for college in order to be eligible. And if you want to add on study of a critical language as part of your study abroad through Gilman, they will give you an additional $3,000 for what they call the Critical Need Language Award. Okay. In addition, there's the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. This is also a department, both Gilman and Fulbright, as well as CLS, are U.S. Department of State sponsored programs. The Fulbright program is an academic year-long program that allows you to either do an independent study and research project, to attend a graduate institution that they basically will pay for in another country, or become an English teaching assistant. There's over 140 countries that you can choose from for these awards. And again, if you want to include study of a critical language as part of your Fulbright experience, you can apply for what is called a Critical Language Enhancement Award, and they will give you additional money to enroll in courses to study that language. The Fulbright program is open to graduating seniors, graduate students, and recent graduates. So you need to have an undergraduate bachelor's degree in hand by the time you start this program. If you are interested in studying Asian languages, there's a program called the Blakemore Freeman Fellowship, which is funding for an academic year of advanced language study in East or Southeast Asia. So you have to demonstrate that you are already at an advanced proficiency in order to qualify for this award. But if you do have that proficiency in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Burmese, Indonesian, Khmer, Thai, or Vietnamese, you can apply for this. It is open to graduating seniors, recent graduates. Again, you do need to be a U.S. citizen because, again, these are all funded through the federal government. And as I said, you have to be at an advanced level or very close to it. The applications for the Blakemore Freeman are currently open, and they will close December 30th. Oh, I went backwards again, sorry. Now I want to talk a little bit about the critical language resources we have here at ASU. You are all extremely fortunate to be at an institution where we really have dedicated a lot of resources to this. And so you don't even have to go very far in order to study critical languages. The first one that I want to talk about is our very own Critical Languages Institute, or CLI, which is funded through, I'm sorry, the title, I think it's Title VI National Language Training. It's a project of the Malikian Center for Russian, Eurasian, and East European Studies. It offers summer intensive programs similar to the Critical Languages Scholarship, or CLS, but it does so here in Tempe, although some of the programs you can choose to go abroad after completing the portion here. So it's domestic study of 12 languages: Albanian, Armenian, BCS, which if you're not familiar with is Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Kazakh, Macedonian, Persian, Polish, Russian, Tatar, Turkish, Ukrainian, and Uzbek. The great thing about CLI is that as an ASU student, you do not have to pay tuition for this program, but you do have to pay a flat fee that covers basically your room and board. Applications for this will open on October 15th, and priority funding for them
Sorry, it doesn't cover room and board.
Oh, it doesn't?
No,
Yikes.
it just covers the credits. So you're I mean, yeah, it's not sort of it's lower than tuition would be for, you know, however many credits it is, but it does not cover room and board.
Okay, thank you for enlightening. Dr. Levin was the director of the Critical Languages Institute. Maybe I should be letting her do this presentation. So this year, ASU is offering the following languages at the following levels. So first year, you can take Tatar. First and second year, you can take Albanian, Macedonian, Persian, Polish, Turkish, Ukrainian, Uzbek, and all of them obviously also offer the first year, but the languages that are listed in advance, you can get to third, fourth, even fifth year for some of them, including Armenian, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Kazakh, and Russian. And you'll notice that the ones that have the little asterisk are ones that are running programs in addition to the domestic program, where you can go abroad for several weeks and continue your study of the language. And they're also now offering them all synchronously online so that you can do it either here or you can do it online. And the Malikian Center has a number of scholarships that you can apply for, ranging from $1,500 to $6,000. You do need to make sure that your application is in by January 31st in order to be considered for these awards. And you can actually apply for more than one. I would recommend that you reach out to CLI at asu.edu to inquire further about these. But these are really amazing programs. First of all of the instruction is by native speakers. Am I correct in that, Dr. Levin?
Yeah, mostly.
Mostly.
I think no, there's been some. Sorry, I think that the one that wasn't is a language that they no longer offer. So I think that would be yes right now.
Yeah. But they're similar to CLS in the sense that they give you basically a year's worth of language education in a summer of intensive, and they really do immerse you in the language. They put on all kinds of great cultural activities that you can engage in. And so you're really speaking, listening, engaging with the language as effectively as you possibly can. And so it's a really great opportunity, and you might as well do it because you're here at ASU. If you're interested in any of the languages that they offer, there's really no good reason not to do them. And if you're interested in applying for CLS, CLI, our CLI here at ASU, is great training for that, right? Because it gives you the kind of experience of being in a rigorous, intensive language program that you can leverage then when you apply for CLS and say, hey, I know I can handle this kind of rigor because I've already done it. I've already experienced it and I was successful at it.
Sorry, from that one, it looks like the advanced plus languages are also offered at the first year level too, right?
That's right. Yes.
Just to be clear.
Yes. Additionally, ASU has been fortunate to be granted what is called the Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship, or FLAS. We got up around $900,000 to spend over 4 years in order to give students scholarships to study the languages that are associated with the Malikian Center. They can be for the summer. They have summer programs, and they also have year-long fellowships. They're open to all ASU undergraduates who are now at the intermediate level of studying those languages and are committed to taking courses that are related to them in area studies. They will grant you, as an undergraduate, $5,000 of stipend and $10,000 in tuition funds. For graduate students, $20,000 of stipend and $18,000 of tuition funds. So these are really wonderful opportunities for the academic year. For the summer programs, they will give you $3,500 of stipend and $5,000 of tuition, which you can then apply to our Critical Languages Institute. And they additionally have about $1,000 you can apply for travel money. And the FLAS target languages very much reflect the areas of interest of the Malikian Center. So Albanian, Armenian, BCS, Kazakh, Macedonian, Persian, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Tatar, Turkish, Ukrainian, and Uzbek. But again, you have to be at an intermediate level. To be eligible for a FLAS, you have to be a U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident. You do need to be a degree-seeking student with at least a 3.0 GPA and a dedicated interest in the region, you have to have proof of at least one academic year of study of the language. And they are particularly looking for applications from underrepresented groups and those with financial need, who that they are really encouraging to apply. The applications for the FLAS fellowships will also open on October 15th. The deadline for submission is January 31st. For more information, I do recommend that you consult the Malikian Center website or reach out to the FLAS coordinator, Teresa Zim, who can answer all of your questions. But we can also help you in the preparation of your applications for the FLAS. And I also want to mention that something that I alluded to earlier is that ASU is one of the very few institutions that still has a Chinese flagship program. This is a multi-year program leading to professional level proficiency in Mandarin. They also give out scholarships for summer language study. There is a requirement that you go abroad for your capstone year, but you can use funds like the Boren Fund to pay for that, that abroad experience. They accept applications on a rolling basis, so you can apply at any time. It's a really fantastic way, again, if you're really dedicated to learning Chinese. As I said, we're one of the few centers left in the United States that have the flagship program. And they really do a great job of getting you the proficiency that you need in Mandarin. Obviously, we all know that Mandarin is one of the languages that the US has designated as very critical to our national security, along with Arabic and Russian. If you have questions, I do suggest that you reach out to the coordinator, Corinne Horton. She can answer any questions that you have about it, or you can also consult their website, which I have listed here. Okay, I gave you a lot of stuff about ASU programs. Or are there any questions about those? Okay, so what I now recommend that you do is you go to our website, which looks like this. You can see all of the different scholarships that we advise on if you go up here to the scholarship tab. You can sign up for an appointment with one of the advisors down here, and you can pick the program that you're interested in. You'll see the names of the advisors and their availability, and you can sign up for a time that is that works for you. You can also, on our website, sign up for our bulletin. That way, every week you get information about the info sessions that we're doing, the upcoming deadlines for various opportunities, and any other information that we want to share with you. If you have particular questions, need some individual advice or guidance, you are more than welcome to reach out to any of us, our director, Dr. Kyle Mox, myself, Dr. Levin, and additionally, Dr. Mitch Habza, who is helping graduate students on the Boren Awards. And there's the link again to make appointments with us. So with that, I will end my ramblings and see if there are any questions. Ala, are you asking about what you said? Can this be applied for as a beginner? Which opportunity were you referring to?
It was for the ASU's Asian foreign language, I think.
The Chinese flagship?
The Chinese
Yeah.
flagship? Yes,
Mhm.
yes, you can come in as a beginner.
Okay.
So the US funded awards are not, they're non-citizens aren't eligible. If you're interested in any of the languages that CLI teaches, the Malikian Center are awards that would cover not the tuition, that would cover the program fee for that. They're philanthropic, so they're like privately funded, and they're absolutely open to non-citizens.
And FLAS is also open to US residents. You don't have to be a citizen.
Gotcha.
Even though that is a federally funded program. But yeah, unfortunately, all the other ones, the State Department ones and the DoD ones are going to require citizenship. But we can also help you find other opportunities. So depending on whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, you can sign up for a general advising appointment. So you'll see when you go to the link to make appointments, there'll be a drop-down menu of programs, and you'll see general undergraduate advising and general graduate advising. So you can sign up for that, and we can kind of walk you through what is out there. Josh, so we used to offer Hebrew at CLI. Maybe Dr. Levin can say why we don't anymore.
It was a enrollment thing. Like we weren't
Mm.
getting enough applicants. I mean, that it was a struggle every year, honestly, to other than when it was online during COVID, when there were a good amount of students. But yeah, we just weren't. I think in part because the Malikian Center for Russian, Eurasian, and East European Studies, like Hebrew was always sort of kind of on the edge of that regionally, so it just wasn't known for it. So we just weren't getting the enrollment. So they don't offer it as a result of that. When they did offer it, all of the scholarships that Malikian and CLI offered were available for it. Well, I shouldn't say all, but all of the internal ones. I don't know anything off the top of my head other than Boren. But again, that's what maybe that general advising appointment is for, to explore the possibilities.
Boren is still listing Israel as a country that you can travel to. So is Fulbright. I'm not sure how long that is going to be, or if that is actually accurate at this moment in time. That would be something we'd have to follow up with the Department of State, probably.
You'd certainly want a backup country to learn the language in if you were applying to learn the language, and that was your first choice of where you'd go.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, but obviously